our next guest, Andreas Klinger from CoinList. Andreas is VP of Engineering at CoinList, and he was previously CTO from Product Hunt. So welcome, Andreas. So let's start with, tell us a bit about like your life at Product Hunt, because you have been many years now at Product Hunt. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Cool. Who here knows Product Hunt as a company? Okay, cool. For those who don't, it's imagine the App Store and Reddit have an ugly baby. It's basically a website where new startups, new products get promoted. It's completely community driven and so on and so on. I was part of the founding team, which essentially is a term for glorified employee. Led the tech team for roughly 4 years. We were acquired by AngelList, which is kind of the LinkedIn for startups, last year. And beginning of this year, I joined the spin-out of AngelList, which is called CoinList, which is essentially services for blockchain companies. This is the shortest summary.
Okay, so originally you are from Austria.
Yeah,
and with Product Hunt, you moved to San Francisco, right?
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit, how is it to move to San Francisco? What are the pros, what are the cons, working-wise, living, everything?
So Product Hunt is a fully distributed team. So we have people in Bulgaria, Belgium, England, France, several parts of America, India, and so on and so on. But we officially had the headquarters in San Francisco. So the founder was there, and he kind of at some point said, like, everybody who does like product decisions should be there just to make like spontaneous sessions a little bit easier. So that was the point where I and a few other people moved to San Francisco, but the team actually stayed fully distributed. So we had like a small office where, when you were lucky, like 2 people were actually there, which was the world headquarters. And technically everybody worked from home, and it was kind of slack as the office. This was like 4 years ago, I guess, 3 years ago, something like that. San Francisco is a kind of a different beast by itself. It's a lot of people have this image of like the flowers in the hair San Francisco, which is not really true anymore. It's much more the Manhattan of tech, and tech people are like bankers essentially in a weird way. It's very bizarre. But there's like a huge density of people who want to focus on technology. So you meet a lot of amazing people. So you might have the situation where you meet somebody at like a coffee place and you get to talk, and then you realize, hey, you do something similar like A, B, and C. It's pretty much the same, but they don't do something similar like. They are actually those people. And you have this quite often there. And also, like, if you meet investors, it turns out they were like one of the first investors in Apple. And this kind of craziness, you know. This is San Francisco. There's like a lot of advantages. Like career-wise, it's like an amazing place to learn. There's a lot of disadvantages. Personally, I would not recommend to move there for life. I would, if you consider moving there, move there for like for your career, like to learn, and basically have this as an objection, like as a main objective.
How important was it for Product Hunt to be in San Francisco?
So, I think very. So Ryan was very close with a lot of opinion leaders, and we kind of made sure that they regularly used the platform, so that they were really close to what we do. Like, kind of, the concept is called like shared ownership, so that they felt that they are part of the community, and it would have been doable like from somewhere else as well. But it has a certain credibility when you just can say additionally, and let's meet for a coffee. So that worked quite well, and it also gave a little bit of a certain additional credibility to the whole platform. We were accepted by Y Combinator, which also happened because Ryan at that point already knew a lot of the people of Y Combinator because they were kind of involved in the platform. So I think all of that could have been done from somewhere else, but not to the success that we had.
Okay.
But that being said, the full team actually is still fully distributed.
Yeah, that's a good point. So fully distributed. I mean, I think everybody has tried one or another way to work remotely, and So what is your take on it? Because remote working is, I think there are pros, but there are also cons. What is your very personal take on it?
Jesus, has everybody ever worked remote for a company that's otherwise completely in one office? Like, have you ever worked like are you like the one remote person? That sucks, right? That's horrible. Yeah, I completely agree.
But that's a satellite then, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you're this one person that's remote, like, your life is like hell. It's completely unbearable as a workplace. So there's a huge difference between a co-located team that has like single people remote. That's something completely else than a team that fully works remote, where everybody works remote. The main reason is, as a remote team, you kind of need, I always say, like 5 times the processes than like a co-located team.
Okay.
So you need to have basically set up, like if you're 5 people, you need to have process like roughly like you would do normally with 25 people. So like really rigid, like when do we do the weekly meeting? Like, let's make notes, like all this kind of stuff coordination-wise, which is usually in a co-located team can get away with for really long. So like it's roughly 5x process in my experience. And the main reason is not because co-located teams are more efficient, but co-located teams can basically monkey patch broken processes with more meetings. So if the communication I needed from you didn't get to me, or the thing you should have done wasn't done, we can just like literally have a meeting right now, interrupt you, whatever you do, we have a meeting right now and discuss it. That's a monkey patch for a process that actually failed. Most teams don't realize that they're actually monkey patching all the time, and all of a sudden they have this setup where they have like meeting over meeting over meeting over meeting, which in a way is just a huge pileup of like legacy monkey patches, because the process itself is like just not streamlined enough. As a remote team, you can't afford it. As a remote team, you have like anybody who has been in a hangout that has been longer than 1 hour knows what physical pain is. Like, it's impossible. So you can't do long meetings. You don't want to do long meetings, and you can't do meetings very often. It's just hell on earth. You want to avoid that. So what you need to do is you need to do like these meetings you do very efficient, and you need to be very aware of those meetings. So scheduled, planned, again, agenda, a very specific person who leads the meeting, a very specific person who knows why everybody is invited, what they need from each person. You know, like very strict processes. And if you have this setup, remote teams work amazing. I personally believe remote teams are better if you need to iterate. So if the team decided what needs to be done, and everybody can focus on their own performance, their own flow, like their own, like my day is set up like this because this is how I want to work, you are extremely productive. That being said, so iteration amazing. For innovation, where you kind of want to like discuss like huge pivots, breaking points in the company, new features, new products, all this kind of stuff. In my experience, being close to each other, like in the same room, is by far better, because there's a lot of subtleties in communication that get lost in a hangout call. So there's a lot of like when I draw something on a whiteboard, which I technically could draw online, you know, and I see your face, how you react. I know something. In a hangout, this kind of stuff gets lost usually. So in my opinion, remote is better for iteration, and co-located or like together is better for innovation. That being said, you usually have phases of both. So in my experience, if a remote team meets regularly, like whole team every 3 months, and project teams like every other 3 months or something like that, it usually works out quite well.
Wow, interesting.
That's my personal opinion.
Very interesting. So, okay, so you recently joined CoinList, which is very interesting because I think you just moved literally 1 floor down at the office, because CoinList is also part of like AngelList, I assume. And there you are, VP of engineering, right?
Yeah.
So, what makes a good engineering lead?
Okay. So to explain, like we were acquired by AngelList, and CoinList is a spin out of AngelList. So in this specific case, it's actually true. I literally moved from 3rd floor to 2nd floor, which is kudos, spot on.
Yeah.
And to my defense, we're trying to get our own office, but it needs time. Like it's San Francisco, you know. So
By
anyway,
the way, you have a pretty nice office.
They're freaking amazing.
Yeah, it's great.
Like Californians can do one thing really well, that's building impressive offices for like no reason whatsoever. I don't really get it, but it's like, holy shit, they're amazing. Anyway, so I moved 1 floor down, and I'm now the VP of engineering at CoinList. And in my opinion, in early stage, companies, like small teams, titles are, like who cares, you know? So I usually say I'm a janitor with a title. So I do a lot of crap work, like making sure pipes work and like cleaning out shit. And I happen to have a title because it looks good to the outside world. So I can speak at conferences, like this kind of stuff, you know? But in a small team, it doesn't really matter that much, you know? Like the same as with Pertan. I was a CTO of a small, like I'm a tech lead technically, you know? Like.
But in small teams, sometimes it's like choose your own title, right? It's like make up your own.
Personally, I would.
I would not recommend it. But,
I personally in teams I try to say like let's avoid title as much as possible, because when the team grows, you sometimes want to leave space for new people who come in, and sometimes you want to hire seniors. But in these cases, I agree.
Okay, I think we are running out of time, so I want to ask the audience for questions, please.
Okay. Did you just run out of questions, or
no? I have 5 more. Okay. But
does anybody have any questions?
The first one always takes a little bit.
Okay.
Come on.
This is exciting.
Anything. We also accept anything, like stupid questions.
Just to break the ice, but it's just, what is VP of engineering other than a CTO? Or just it sounds better, and you could also have chosen
I'm sure
CTO.
I shouldn't say this on the record, but it's basically CTO title was already given away. Here's your title. I'm pretty sure I shouldn't say this in front of a camera, but that's usually what it is. In larger teams, usually there is a distinction, because usually either the CTO, for example, if it's a technical product, the CTO does a lot of sales to like customers. If the CTO happens to be one of the founders, sometimes for like founder politic reason, he doesn't want to give up the CTO title, you know. So you get like somebody else who actually leads the team, and that's a VP of engineering. Sometimes it's also just because you want to have, I don't know, like a certain division focusing on something. It's just an engineering management title, nothing else. Vice President of Engineering, which sounds super impressive. If you know how small those companies usually are, it's a joke.
Pass it on.
Any more questions?
As a VP of engineering, I think you give some feedback to the developers of your team. So do you have any tips? Because sometimes it's very hard to give feedback, like honest feedback to developers.
So what I usually do is monthly one-on-ones. Like first of all, for me in a one-on-one, I do not discuss project status. I do not discuss process stuff, like these kind of things, like not work things, you know. Ideally, those have project meetings. Sometimes you use them to just break the ice a bit in the beginning, you know, like get talking. But what I actually want to do is like the one-on-one is the time for the person, like for the engineer, like for this person. And I want to focus on, let's call it people issues. Like anything that's going on in this person's life or workplace that hinders this person to like succeed most optimally. Also, there's also like a lot of the things around like how can this person improve over time. You kind of want to like think of the person not as like your employee, but like as a highly talented person in a career path. And they usually have, like, they're staying with you like a few years, and then afterwards they go somewhere else because they have talent, you know. And you kind of want to think, where does this person want to go? What can the person learn? How can the person progress, and all these kind of things. And this is usually what I focus on in the one-on-ones. Regarding feedback, one of the hardest things in feedback, in my opinion, is people and context equals output. So you can't hire, and we did this a lot. We hired amazing people, and they completely failed in our setup, either because our setup wasn't ready, or not good for how they think and work and act. And this doesn't mean that the people are bad, you know, but the output didn't work. And you need to split between person and context. It's very bad to discuss. Like it's a little bit weird if you need to discuss with the person why they suck. But it's really easy to discuss what is the setup that doesn't enable them fully. Like where do they see the problems? Like how can you help them here to actually get to the point? And like there's in the end there's only two. Like if it's not working, there's like two situations. Either you didn't manage to get them to the place they need to be, or you didn't get the context right for them to be to work, or usually the third one, you did a bad hire. So in all of these three cases, it's anyway your fault. So you kind of want to use this time to figure out what can you do to help them and fix this. So this is kind of like the positive aspect. Obviously, sometimes you just need to discuss things that went wrong, like what people did wrong, like somebody missed a deadline or somebody wasn't responsible at the launch time and all these kind of things. In this case, it comes much down to explaining principles of work. You have very little process in a team usually, but you need to make sure this process is really well understood. And if it what was the original motivation why it wasn't done the right way, and if the motivation is not negative, not bad by intention, then usually there's something you can figure out, and so on and so on. What I usually do at the end is I usually, before these kind of really tough talks, I write down beforehand what's my opinion. I write down afterwards what's my opinion, and kind of with a timer. So when I want to revisit this, because it's very weird when you're in a stressful situation, you have the feeling that, Jesus, this is wrong, and we discussed this months ago, and then you look at the actual calendar, and it was last Thursday, So it's kind of important, for me at least, to also have a timer where I say, this is the moment when I want to revisit this and make this explicit. But honestly, this is 5 hours more of discussion. This is the core, what I believe.
Cool.
Any other questions regarding engineering management? What would be interesting for engineering management? Because I have to give a talk at 3 hours about it, and I don't know what to talk about. Sorry.
No, bring the mic.
No mic for you.
Thanks. So thanks for the interview first. My question would be, or it's rather not a question, but can you say something about the hiring process at your company?
Yeah. So hiring is easily one of the hardest and most exhausting things you have to do in a team, unfortunately. I can speak easier about the product and hiring process because that's a little bit more streamlined. So we were in the lucky position that we could hire almost everywhere, West Coast to Eastern Europe time zones. So that includes Latin America, Africa, and so on, which is a huge, almost privilege. What I usually did is sourcing and screening, AngelList source, AngelList jobs and recruits and this kind of stuff. Also open source and basically look who the people involved, which works well in a remote team, which doesn't really work now for CoinList because we can only hire in San Francisco and the chance that somebody happens to be in San Francisco is small. We use nowadays a tool called Intello and so on. So a few other tools. Basically, all of them are meant that you have a pipeline where can you evaluate profiles. Next step for us usually screening out profiles, and I tend to do a screen call very early on, which is really casual, and the idea of that is pretty much to make sure that the person has every question answered they need to know, that they can actually make an educated decision if they want to commit the time of the whole hiring process, if this is something they want to pursue. And also for me to better understand what would be a good role, what would be a good fit for this person. I usually ask a few open-ended questions in this call, which feel very casual, but tell me a lot about the person themselves, how they see the world and how they performed in the last team and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, this happens. Afterwards, what they usually do is a small take-home. For the simple reason there is people in Eastern Europe struggle with English. And they just by, for example, a lot of other places, just the culture, how you present yourself. And if you talk with Americans, they are amazing in English and they're amazing in presenting themselves. And you have an impression of I had this expression of San Francisco senior. You talk to somebody in San Francisco and you feel like this is the best engineer you ever met. And then you realize, first of all, they're an intern somewhere. And second of all, they can't program nothing. And how the hell? But they sounded amazing, So we use a take-home challenge at that point to filter out people who can actually program a bit or not. And then afterwards, I do pair programming. So I actually, we have a call, I have a small realistic situation, which used to be refactoring. Then later on, it became a small variation of product hunt. And we just go over this together. And the person works and I just help whenever I can. just like how you would work in real life, right? And if everything checks out so far, it's meeting the team. And at that point, it's much more for the person to also like get to know the team and see if like these are people they want to work with, but also for the team, the same, right? And at the end of this, we usually have like a vote. And the goal is ideally that everybody in the team likes this person, but if not, then c'est la vie, you know, like then you will figure it out.
Okay, thank you very much. Time is up, unfortunately. You have a talk today later on, right?
Yeah.
So everybody, please join the talk. Thank you very much for the insights.
Cool.
It was a pleasure to have you here.
Likewise, thanks
Andreas
for having me.
Klinger.
Sure.